My friend, there is a mystery hidden in the scrolls of the prophet, a chapter veiled in silence, skipped over in the liturgies of the synagogue, and yet it holds a key, perhaps the key, a passage that pierces like a sword, divides like a blade, and yet offers healing in its wounds. That chapter is Isaiah 53. It is written in the ancient scrolls in the language of the prophets. There exists a mystery, ancient, sacred, and concealed, a chapter written by the prophet Isaiah nearly 2,800 years ago. A chapter that flows with revelation, speaks with unmistakable clarity, and yet has been hidden in plain sight, not by accident, not by forgetfulness, but by design. It is called by many the forbidden chapter. It is not forbidden in name. It is forbidden in presence. For when the Jewish people gather in the synagogue and the scroll of the prophets is read aloud, from Isaiah 52 one week to Isaiah 54 the next, the chapter in between vanishes, skipped, as if it were never there, a missing piece of prophecy tucked into the seams of the scroll. Why would such a powerful, poetic, and soul-piercing prophecy be silenced? Why would it be the one chapter the ancient tradition does not dare to utter? Because Isaiah 53 does not whisper, it thunders. Because it speaks of one, a servant who suffers, who is despised and rejected, who bears the guilt of others, who is led like a lamb to the slaughter, and yet opens not his mouth. And when you read it, not with commentary, not with doctrine, but with an open heart, it unveils something undeniable, something divine. It unveils the face of the Messiah, long before Bethlehem, long before Calvary, long before the tomb was empty. Isaiah, son of Amos, saw what many still cannot see. He saw a man rejected by his own, a man pierced, a man punished not for his own sins, but for the sins of others. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. This chapter has been a point of controversy for centuries. Among Christians, it is revered. It is the crown jewel of Old Testament prophecy, proof undeniable that Jesus, Yeshua, is the promised one. But among Jews, it is the chapter that cannot be read, that must not be seen, because to see it is to confront a truth that overturns centuries of rejection, that lifts the veil, that reveals the very one who was once dismissed. And yet, there it remains, still in the Hebrew Bible, still in the scroll of Isaiah, still bearing witness. It is not absent because it lacks clarity. On the contrary, it is too clear. It names no name, yet every word bears a signature. It speaks no title, yet every phrase cries, Mashiach. The rabbis once saw it before the veil descended, before the centuries of division, before the fear of apostasy hardened hearts. The ancient sages wrote of the suffering Messiah, Mashiach ben Yosef, who would suffer for the sins of Israel. They linked him to this chapter, to the man of sorrows, to the one who would be stricken, smitten, and afflicted. But over time, as that figure became too closely associated with the one whom the Gentiles followed, Yeshua of Nazareth, the interpretation shifted. The forbidden meaning was buried. The chapter was reassigned. It speaks of Israel, they began to say. The nation is the servant. The people are the ones who have suffered unjustly. And in a sense, that too has truth. Israel has suffered. The Jewish people have been bruised by history. But Isaiah 53 speaks not of a multitude, but of one. One man, one figure, singular, innocent, silent before his accusers. And so the chapter remained in the scroll, but was removed from the lips. It remained in ink, but vanished from sound. A hidden scroll inside the open book. A forbidden flame still burning in the ashes of tradition. It is not merely forgotten, it is veiled, like Moses descending from Sinai, covering his face, like the temple curtain torn in two, yet still stitched together by those who fear what lies beyond it. He is not called by name, no title is given, no genealogy recorded, and yet every line of the prophecy breathes with his identity. The figure emerges from the shadows of Isaiah's vision, not as a king in splendor, not as a warrior with a sword, but as a servant who suffers, a servant who is bruised, crushed, rejected, and yet chosen. In Isaiah 53, the prophet opens a window into the heart of redemptive mystery, and what he sees is not what men expect. He sees the Messiah, not exalted in power, but marred beyond recognition, not clothed in majesty, but in sorrow, not riding a chariot, but bearing a cross. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. From the first words, this servant is cast in contrast to what Israel had long awaited. The Messiah was to be a son of David, mighty to deliver, strong to overthrow the oppressor. But this servant is weak in appearance, with no form or comeliness that men should desire him. He is not embraced but rejected, not honored but hidden. His suffering is not incidental, it is the core of his mission. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. The prophet speaks not of his own pain, but ours. The servant suffers not for his sins, but for the sins of others. This is substitution, intercession, a divine exchange. The innocent bearing the guilt of the guilty. The righteous taking the place of the unrighteous. This is not only suffering, it is atonement. The Hebrew makes it even more striking. He was pierced, mechalal, a word used to describe the violent piercing of the body, and crushed, daka, utterly broken, shattered. These are not poetic wounds. They are literal, visible, brutal. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. The suffering servant is not just an image of sorrow, but a vessel of healing. Through his pain, peace is released. Through his stripes, restoration comes. The prophet is painting the cross hundreds of years before it would be lifted on a hill outside Jerusalem. And he is speaking of the one who would hang upon it. All we like sheep have gone astray. Each one has turned to his own way. It is the universal confession of the human condition. All have wandered, all have sinned, and in the divine mystery, God lays upon this one, the servant, the iniquity of us all. Not just Israel's iniquity, not just Judah's rebellion, but the sin of the nations. The sins of every man and woman, of every time and place. The totality of guilt transferred onto the shoulders of one. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He does not resist. He does not defend himself. He does not curse those who strike him. He is silent like a lamb before its shearers. The imagery is unmistakable. The lamb, the Passover sacrifice, the innocent for the guilty, the blood that delivers. The silence is not weakness, it is submission to a higher purpose. He was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. The servant dies, not by accident, not by injustice alone, but by divine will. His life is cut off, a Hebrew term often used for violent death, for separation from life itself. And why? Not for himself, but for the transgression of my people. Even in death, his identity continues to unfold. Buried among the wicked, yet with the rich in his death. Details that centuries later would align with the burial of Yeshua, laid in a rich man's tomb, though executed as a criminal. But the prophecy does not end with death. It speaks of seeing the light of life, of prolonging his days, of justifying many. This suffering servant, though crushed, will rise again. He will see the fruit of his travail. He will become the intercessor, the Redeemer, the one who makes many righteous. Prophetic precision. There are prophecies in the Bible that speak in symbols, in shadows, in glimpses of things yet to come. But then there are others that speak not in riddles, but with startling clarity, with a sharpness that cuts through centuries, with words that echo across time and align themselves with actual moments in history. One such prophecy is found in Isaiah 53, and what it contains is not vague. It is not abstract. It is detailed, specific, surgical in its insight. It is prophetic precision. Isaiah wrote these words nearly 8 centuries before the birth of Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, and yet he describes with unnerving accuracy the life, death, and redemptive purpose of the one whom Christians call the Messiah. He paints not a broad picture, but a meticulous portrait, a step-by-step unveiling of the passion long before it came to pass. It was despised and rejected by men. It was not simply that the servant would suffer. It was that he would be rejected, not by strangers, but by his own. This mirrors the gospel accounts, where Yeshua is turned away by the very people he came to save, despised by the elders, the priests, the multitudes, and even his own disciples in his hour of trial. It was pierced for our transgressions. This is not metaphor, this is literal. Isaiah could not have known about crucifixion. It was not yet a method of execution in Israel, and yet the Spirit reveals it. Piercing the Roman nails, the Roman spear, his hands, his feet, his side. The Gospel of John records how he was pierced and how blood and water flowed from his side, every wound, every drop of blood foreseen with surgical clarity by the prophet of old. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, the Gospels declare that when Yeshua was brought before Pilate, he remained silent. When he was accused by the chief priests, he did not defend himself. He was led, not driven. He surrendered himself to the will of the Father, even to death. This too was not general suffering. It was precise obedience. The imagery of a lamb ties directly to the Passover. He is the Lamb of God, the perfect sacrifice chosen. Without blemish, it was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Again, not poetic suggestion, this is logistical accuracy. Crucifixion was a criminal's death. Those crucified were meant to be discarded, buried among the wicked. But Yeshua was buried in a rich man's tomb. Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the council, offered his own tomb. The very tension in this verse, wicked in death, rich in burial, came to pass in the smallest detail. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. The servant does not remain in death. This is not merely suffering unto destruction, it is suffering unto redemption. Resurrection is embedded in the prophecy. He will see the light of life. In Hebrew, or life from the dead. It was declared by Isaiah long before the stone was rolled away. The resurrection of the Messiah was not a Christian invention. It was a prophetic revelation. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Even his purpose is spelled out, not just to suffer, not just to die, but to justify, to declare others righteous by the weight of his sacrifice, the doctrine of atonement, of substitution, of imputed righteousness, all embedded here, not in the letters of Paul, but in the scroll of Isaiah, hundreds of years before. This is not coincidence. It is not chance. It is design. It is divinely orchestrated alignment between prophecy and fulfillment. Every step, every wound, every silence, every cry, it was written before it was lived, foretold before it was fulfilled. The division and the veil. It is not merely a difference in doctrine. It is a division of revelation, a veil placed not over the eyes, but over the soul, a blindness not of intellect, but of spirit, a division that began with rejection and continues in silence. There comes a time in every mystery when what was once hidden must be revealed. The silence begins to break. The veil begins to lift. What was once concealed from a people becomes a light shining in their midst. And so it is with Isaiah 53, the chapter that was long silenced in synagogues, long dismissed by scholars, long regarded as forbidden, is now beginning to stir once more. A quiet awakening is spreading across the ancient people of the covenant. It is not loud. It is not televised. It does not come with fanfare. It is like the breath of wind before the storm, like the whisper of dry bones rattling in the valley. It is the stirring of hearts, the sudden question in the soul, the cry, why have we never read this? Why were we never shown this chapter? Across the world, Jewish men and women, rabbis, scholars, sons and daughters of Abraham, are beginning to read Isaiah 53, not with tradition, but with trembling, and what they see shakes them. Not theology, not doctrine, but a face, the face of the one they were told could not be the Messiah, the one who was crucified, the one who was pierced, the one who still bears the wounds. And many are coming to the revelation. He was always ours. Not foreign, not Roman, not Gentile. He was born of Israel. He walked the land of Judah. He kept the feasts. He taught in the temple. He wept over Jerusalem. He bore the reproach of his people. He fulfilled the Torah. He lived the prophecies. He was wounded for our transgressions, and still he called. This awakening is not accidental. It was foretold. The prophet Zechariah saw a day when they would look upon him whom they have pierced and mourn for him as one mourns for an only son. Paul the apostle wrote of a mystery, that Israel's blindness would not last forever, but that one day all Israel shall be saved. The veil would be lifted, the branch would be grafted back in, the remnant would rise. This is the future that lies ahead, not just for the Jewish people, but for the world. For if their rejection of Messiah brought reconciliation to the Gentiles, what will their acceptance bring but life from the dead? The return of the Jewish people to their Messiah is not the end of the story. It is the catalyst of the final chapter. The ancient olive tree, long dormant, begins to bear fruit again. The dry bones, once scattered, begin to stand. The nation, once in exile, returns not only to the land, but to the Lord. And it all begins with a chapter, a scroll, a prophecy written on ancient parchment but burning with eternal fire. Isaiah 53 is not only a record of what was, it is a blueprint of what is to come. It is the doorway to revival, the spark of restoration, the signal that the times of the Gentiles are drawing to a close and the eyes of Israel are beginning to open. The nations that once carried the gospel to the ends of the earth are now being summoned to stand with Israel, not merely in politics or borders, but in spirit and in truth, to intercede, to weep, to labor, to speak, for the awakening is delicate and the future is holy. Messiah is calling to his ancient people once more, not in wrath, but in mercy, not in judgment, but in love. He waits as he waited over Jerusalem. He watches as the fig tree begins to blossom, and those who once could not see are beginning to lift their eyes. Those who once turned away are beginning to turn back. The veil is thinning. The division is trembling. The forbidden chapter is no longer forbidden. The servant who suffered is about to be revealed as the king who reigns. Isaiah 53 stands as both a mystery and a mirror, revealing the suffering Messiah to those with eyes to see, yet remaining veiled to others. It is the chapter that divides Christians and Jews, not out of malice, but out of prophetic tension. Yet the veil is thinning, the silence is breaking, and hearts are awakening across the world. What was once concealed is now being revealed. The servant pierced and rejected lives, and he still calls. Isaiah 53 is not just a prophecy. It is an invitation to see, to return, and to recognize the one who was wounded for us all.